Hello and welcome back to Battlefront Central. Today I have an interesting video for you guys. I'm going to be doing a video with Ian from CyberAceGaming, another awesome Battlefront channel that I definitely think you should all go and check out. Today we're going to be talking about space to ground battles in the new Battlefront, and also about space in general and what we'd like to see. So what was your favourite aspect of space battles in Battlefront 2, Ian?
Hey, how's it going, Connor? So yeah, as I explained to you a little bit earlier, my favorite part of playing space battles in Battlefront 2 was actually be more of the supporting role. As I explained, I really love, usually in any game I play, Battlefield, Battlefront, to play as that, engineer type class. And so when it came to Battlefront 2, I was always playing as the pilot and, either inside our own ship, fixing our own stuff like our shield generators, or in the enemy ships and destroying their internals like their engines and their auto turret defense mainframe, and of course their shield generator. So that's always something that I like to do. I like to set up that base using a gunship in the other team's hangar, and just slowly kind of take over their ship from the inside out, as opposed to the dogfighting style.
See, I'm more of the complete opposite. I like to spawn in. Every now and then I'll go in just to remove their auto turret defense mainframe, because that really ticked me off when you'd be flying a starfighter and you just get nailed by their turrets. But other than that, I just prefer flying around in a bomber, bombing out their frigates and taking out their subsystems from the outside. It's usually not as effective, it doesn't get as many points, but I definitely feel cooler flying a spaceship.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's probably more on the fun side to kind of go around being dogfighting and such, and definitely can be effective in certain situations. I always found that with me on the inside, and my cousin would go and do everything from the outside, and having one person doing kind of each role really got the job done pretty quick and pretty effectively.
Yeah, I mean, when we were playing Battlefront 2 last night, all of you guys who are watching this won't know, we actually had a big game of Battlefront 2 between 4 Battlefront YouTube channels last night. And we went and played Space Maigito, and it was freaking awesome. Me and Elliot from Battlefront Updates were playing, and we actually managed to take down the opposing team, which was Robbie from Game Verb, Star Wars HQ, and Ian from CyberAceGaming. We took them down pretty quickly because we did an alternating pattern. F would go inside their ship, destroy as much as possible, whereas I'd fly on the outside and I'd take out the subsystems he couldn't get at. It was definitely much more effective than having two on either side.
Exactly, that's a really perfect example of that strategy, and you guys effectively kicked our butts. So
it might have had something to do with Robbie not being used to the keyboard.
It's true. Robbie has been a very seasoned console player, and myself am more of a console gamer, where you guys have more of that PC edge. So how about we jump into today's topic, which is, as you said, is going to be space to ground combat and space combat in general. So let's get into this.
Well, the first thing that we saw about space to ground combat came from the Free Radical Alpha, which was actually leaked must have been about 4 years ago now. And it was towards the end of our hopes for Battlefront 3 coming out, and then we actually got this amazing alpha footage which showed you being able to go from a planet's surface around this massive city under siege and just go straight into space in one action. There was no loading screen. It looked fantastic. But unfortunately that never I just messed up big time. Unfortunately that never came.
Right.
And we were all left disappointed.
We definitely were, and that's something that is very notable about the Free Radical Battlefront stage, is that they really had something going there with the space-to-ground technology. And really every person from Free Radical that I've seen interviews from and see them talking about the game, they really said that technology died with them. And that's really a shame, because as you said, without any loading screen, boom, right from the ground, right up to space, no latency. It was quick, it was good. They had some technology going. That was just, the alpha phase. That was just years and years ago. If they were still in business, we'd probably be on Battlefield 4 by now, Battlefront 4, Battlefront 5, so I can only imagine what they could have did in today's world with that same technology. And I really do hope that DICE can emulate what Free Radical did back in the day. I have heard that DICE is actually working with all of the old stuff. They have access to everything that has been made on Battlefront 3 so far. Of course, they're not going to use it because they're making a complete reboot of the series, but they should have, an idea of what exactly they were doing over at Free Radical and even at LucasArts.
Yeah, I definitely think they need to try and implement as many of the old ideas that Free Radical had, because all of the Battlefront followings and the forums have been kept alive because of that leaked alpha footage. It showed us that Battlefront was still in the making and that it was always still possible for it to come back around. And the reason there is such a strong following today is because of these features that they showed us. So I think DICE need to realise that we want your take on the thing, we want your idea on the game, we want you to make it your own as well, because we don't want it just to stagnate like it was going to eventually. But we also want to see some of the features that, like, we weren't promised them, but we saw them, we kind of want them now.
Right. You know, we want to see this innovation in the series. And as I think everybody's saying, I think, you know, we can all agree, we don't want to see, you know, Star Wars Battlefield. We want Star Wars Battlefront. You know, that has its own unique features, and I'm flattered to see DICE is taking it on, especially with their Frostbite 3 engine. I think they're going to be able to do some great stuff. But I think they're going to have to go beyond what they're already been doing, you know, with the Battlefield series, and they're really going to have to kind of innovate on the technology of this game to really deliver and bring Battlefront back to what really made it stand out in the past.
Which actually leads on to some of the features that we think from the Free Radical Alpha should definitely be included. Not all of these were shown in the Free Radical Alpha, but some of them are features that I've sort of written down as an idea of what I think and what Ian thinks also should be in Battlefront, things that we need to talk about and go over. So firstly, in the Free Radical Alpha footage, we saw escape pods. A droid actually landed in an escape pod and started engaging clone troopers and Yoda, which were on the ground on Coruscant. It was really, really cool because it just showed that you could go from ground to space as a player. You didn't have to take a ship. You could just get off of your ship, get in an escape pod, and just head straight down to the surface. And it was all one clean movement. So I definitely think that escape pods are like an interesting idea for the next one.
No, I definitely agree on that, and it's something I think that really can tie into as well. Is not necessarily the factor of just using the escape pod as a mean of getting from space to ground, but also using the escape pod for, you know, exactly the namesake of the pod, which is an escape pod. You know, consider the Star Wars Episode 3, where General Grievous, you know, hops back into an escape pod and gets away from the ship that's going down. Just something like that, where you could really see, and we'll talk about Levolution later in the video. But just think about, you know, your ship's going down, it's blowing up, you're still in a safe spot. You hop in an escape pod, get out of the ship before it blows up, and save yourself from dying with the ship. Or your ship is being stormed by, you know, an enemy platoon. They're about to bust into the room you're in. You hop in an escape pod before they can gun you down. You know, something like that. I think it'd be really, really cool. Just be like, haha, sucker, jump into the escape pod and you know, avoid death.
Yeah, that would definitely be really interesting. I mean, it would also have a massive repercussion because what you've got when you have space-to-ground battles is actually 2 levels of the game. I don't mean levels in a term of like mission levels, I mean as in there are 2 separate battles going on, but they could also be linked. So if you shoot a ship down and it launches escape pods, that's also going to be bad for your guys on the ground, because then all of these new reinforcements are going to come from space. I mean, obviously not all the escape pods will survive, but those that do could actually make a little bit of a mess behind the enemy lines, which actually adds a nice, interesting gameplay feature.
Exactly, and I think that something we're going to see with this game and having the, you know, as you said, 2 different battles going on at once, if DICE does this. Now, we don't know even for sure if DICE is going to do Space to Ground. We really hope they do, but I think it's really going to bring about a whole new strategy for how you know, games like this are played, because you're really going to need to work as a team to coordinate what's going on both on your space front and your land front, especially if these 2 battles are linked somehow. So if what you're doing in space is affecting what you're doing on the ground and vice versa, you're going to want to coordinate with the rest of your team so that you can effectively win on both fronts.
Yes, definitely. I mean, at the moment, DICE seem to be making, I don't want to say, in terms of gameplay, kind of linear. It seems that the maps are, they're obviously very big maps, but they're also quite confined in what happens in the map sort of affects everyone, in that they lose their I don't want to call it a command post, their flag, they lose their flag place, and that obviously affects everyone. But if space to ground battles is taken forward as DICE as a gameplay feature, then they're really going to have to think about how they're going to balance it in terms of how each player sort of interacts with each other. I mean, something we could move on to now is movable capital ships, which is something I am definitely hoping to see. I want players to be able to get in a capital ship and move it around the map. I don't want to be constricted to like a flight plan or anything. I just want to be able to move the capital ship wherever I want to. Obviously, within reason, I can't move it a million bajillion miles away, but but I'd definitely like to be able to move it closer to the enemy or further away based on how much health our capital ship's got, how many fighters we've got left. It adds a whole new layer of tactic to a game which otherwise would just be a bunch of guys shooting each other.
Right, and that's something I completely agree with, because I thought that was always kind of a boring factor of that big ship. You could only do so much with it. You couldn't move it. You couldn't, you could fix like 4 different parts on it, and that's about all you could do to interact with your giant ship. And your giant ship there, that's your capital ship. That's really like the heart of your operation during a space battle, and it would just be so much more convenient to actually be able to move that closer to the enemy, move that further away from the enemy. Also, in some other free radical footage that was leaked, this was actually a later free radical footage that was leaked, I believe on Star Wars Day of last year, and it actually showed giant ships. I wouldn't say they were quite as large as the capital ships, but a lot bigger than you would be flying around in like a starfighter or something, cargo ships or something like that. And they were actually, these giant ships, and they were flying in like the lower atmosphere of Coruscant or some similar planet, and they were all manned by actual player crews. And so we discussed this earlier in a call, how people had to work together on these ships to kind of keep them flying and keep them moving around. And I would definitely want to see that not only with capital ships, but with most of the ships in Battlefront. I think that there should be a little more complexity, but also a little more things you can do, a little more capability when it comes to piloting the larger ships in the Battlefront game.
They definitely need to add more functionality, I think. I mean, only being confined to a hangar, like a sort of auto turret defense mainframe, and then just 3 extra rooms was boring as hell. I know that they were limited by hardware and by the time they had to make it. Battlefront 2 had an incredible turnaround time. It was less than a year. I mean, that was quite something for a game which changed so much from Battlefront 1.
This is very true. Very true.
But I think what we need is larger interiors, less generic interiors, and to be honest, we need to be able to fix more and do more with the ship. The ship itself seems to be such an incredible gameplay component. If we can move it around, repair more subsystems, customize it in our own way, and perhaps add little bonuses at the start of the game to it, then we can definitely make it more interesting and less generic. Because if we just have the same generic capital ships slugging it out every single game, and they just stay in the same position, then that map's lifespan in terms of how long a player wants to play that map for is going to be tiny.
Right.
Whereas if each game that ship changes position, its players change and they change their gameplay style because it's changed position, and then you have like perhaps when you go to board it, one game there's almost no players around, they're all on the surface. Then the other game you have these entire like patrols going around with engineers fixing areas of the ship, like making it more difficult for you to take it down. I mean, that completely changes the way that a team has to play in order to beat the other team. It definitely gives the map a longer life.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with everything you said there. So moving on from the movable capital ships, then what we just branched off into, which was the actual functionality. Let's talk about now the actual Levolution, and as far as how destructible everything in space can be, and how Levolution can also play a factor in that.
Yeah, something that I want to see is when perhaps a large ship turbo laser or a SPAMT. For those who don't know what an SPAMT is, it is the large laser that can be seen used as artillery in Attack of the Clones, when the clones use it to take down a droid core ship. And it can also be seen in use in Revenge of the Sith when it's fired out from underneath a Venator class cruiser to take out a Munificent class frigate. That's a bit nerdy, but it's there, it happens. It's basically just a big laser beam. And I want this laser beam, I don't want weapons just to bounce off their hull or create a little bit of a burn mark. I want to see chunks of wreckage break off, perhaps even if it's just Levolution events, I want to see chunks of wreckage break off, and I want it to affect how the game's played. In Battlefront 2, we saw that when we were flying around, there were asteroids in the way, and there was also like sort of spaceborne wreckage in some of the Galactic Civil War maps. And it made it really, really interesting, because if you like linearly in a straight line went from your hangar to their hangar, there was nothing in the way, but there were a ton of fighters. But then if you went underneath the ships, there was all of this wreckage in the way, which actually made it really easy to evade fighters. So I think it definitely shows the amount of change that you can give to gameplay just by adding all of this wreckage that can randomly spew out of a ship when it's shot. And it can either fall to the ground, it can stay in space, it can become an obstacle to other ships, or maybe Maybe even it just breaks off and burns up in atmosphere. It doesn't have to do anything, but it's still going to change how the game's played.
Right. And that's something that I think is really important, especially, and DICE does have like a good attention to detail when it comes to graphics of the game, and I think that's something that will also kind of play into graphical things, is kind of the whole wreckage thing, but also gameplay. I mean, it also greatly affects that. But as you said, even if they only have it for like the visual sense, that it breaks up and then it burns away and it doesn't become anything of use or anything, or any obstacle, I still think, you know, like you said, it should definitely be there. But yeah, as far as things breaking off of the ships and everything, that definitely needs to be there. I don't know if you ever played the Force Unleashed series, but in the Force Unleashed, you could do some destructible environment type things, such as breaking the glass in a window and everybody would get sucked out into space, and just small stuff like that, which I think is something that really needs to be able to happen in Battlefront, especially in space battles. Just certain little things, little traps that you can kind of do while you're on board, so that you can you know, trick the other players and wipe them out with some cool tricks. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I want to see a game where you don't just shoot, you can use your entire environment around you to outwit and kill your opponent. You don't have to use a gun. You can program a window to blast itself out, or you can put a jetpack on the window, destroy the window, and you stand behind a shielded compartment and watch as your enemy just gets sucked into space. I mean, something that we can go on to now is talk about the methods that they'd use to go from space to ground. Now, the method that we saw in Free Radical, in the Free Radical Alpha footage, was something that I've kind of called thin atmosphere fading, where the higher they went up in the atmosphere, they faded one plane of existence in the game with another, and it just kept getting darker and darker until it was space. And it was actually a really, really thin amount of the atmosphere was actually there. I mean, in terms of how much atmosphere a planet actually has, it's really, really thin. Obviously, that was to make it not take 10 minutes to get up to the space battle, but it was also because of hardware restrictions. Now, there's two methods they could use. They could use that method, which, to be honest, I'd kind of prefer, but alternatively, you could just tell your ships to make tiny jumps in light speed, tiny hyperspace jumps to get into orbit, which means technically it's a loading screen, but if it means that we still have space to ground, then I'm all for it. I mean, it could allow for some absolutely epic chases and dogfights. Perhaps you take off in a large gunship, or the Millennium Falcon, for say, if you really want to go that far. You take off in the Millennium Falcon, you're flying down through Coruscant, you're avoiding so much shit being shot at you, you're flying around corners, through alleyways, then at the last minute when all seems lost, a missile's coming straight for you, you make the jump to light speed, and then you just appear in a massive space battle. You've just gone from one portion of the game where you're about to die to another one where there are a ridiculous amount of extra possibilities.
I completely agree with that, and that also kind of works with what I was saying before about, you know, the whole escape pod type thing, where you could be up fighting one battle in space, then I'm out, and, you know, go down in your escape pod, and then now you're on the next map. It opens up a whole new possibility for the game and what you can do, and completely changes you know, how you were fighting before. Now, I honestly, I do think that if Free Radical could pull this off years ago, there's no excuse besides, I don't know, laziness, why DICE wouldn't just make it so that you can just go in and out without any trouble. But like you said, if a loading screen means having the feature as opposed to not having the feature, you know, I'm willing to make the sacrifice.
Definitely. I mean, something we can move on to here is the scale of the space battles. I want to see large-scale space battles. I mean, also, I don't want every single space battle to be a Coruscant space battle, some massive siege of the planet is going on and there's thousands of ships involved. Obviously, even on today's hardware, that would be pretty damn taxing, and I don't expect that at all. But I do want to see more than just one or two capital ships. I want to see fleets slugging it out, even if you can only access like maybe 2/3 of that area, and the last bit is just pictures shooting at each other. So long as it looks good, I'm fine. And what I don't want DICE to aim for is fantastic visuals, because something that I keep seeing with a lot of modern game developers is they keep aiming for the fantastic visuals before they've even got the gameplay nailed down. And I want them to get the game working with the massive fleets and a huge variety of vehicles and features, and then amp up the visuals as they go. I don't want to see a game that's made basically just to give it fantastic visuals and horrible gameplay, because that's not what Battlefront's about. And another example of this is Gary's mod. It has a variety of physics effects, it has ridiculously rewarding gameplay in terms of what you can do, but its visuals are terrible. But people don't play it because of its visuals, and people never played Battlefront because of its visuals. We love playing Battlefront because we got to play with bots, we got to play in Star Wars universe, obviously, that's what we all loved. We got to go from space, we got to go to ground. It was just great. We loved it because of the game and the gameplay. And the visuals will be a nice feature, so long as it is in addition to the gameplay. I don't want to see them base the game off of visuals, because then we're just going to lose out on the features that we can get.
Exactly, and I couldn't be any more spot on with what you said about, gameplay over visuals. There's a reason that we still play Battlefront today, almost 10 years later. And it's not because the game looks, great on my TV all stretched out. That's not it. It's because I'm playing Battlefront and I'm having a great time in the Star Wars universe, as a clone trooper, as a droid, what have you. I'm just having a good time with the game, because still, even today, how that game played, I haven't found a game that is completely can completely replace it. I've always found myself having to go back to get my Battlefront fix, because there's nothing else that fills that void for me.
Definitely. I mean, in terms of Star Wars games, there are a lot of Star Wars games, don't get me wrong, but Battlefront was unique, and I think that's what sold the game. It was unique in what you could do in the Star Wars universe. There were plenty of other Star Wars based games, but because of the unique and rewarding to Star Wars players, the unique and rewarding gameplay, that's what sort of brought us back time and time again, and why a lot of people still play it even to this day. So they have to focus on the gameplay first, because that's what sold the game, and that's what keeps people playing. Because there's so many people out there playing games which perhaps don't have lens flares and massive amounts of ridiculously high-res textures. That's not why people play a game. Sure, it's a nice selling point, but ultimately what keeps them coming back and keeps them buying stuff for the game, such as DLC, is new features, new things to do. That's exactly what we need. Exactly.
And just to add to how you mentioned the actual scale of the battle, I mentioned the scale of the space map itself. I know, as you said, you don't have to be able to go everywhere, even if you just see stuff, in the background that you can't actually get to. But something I do want to really elaborate on, especially just after playing Battlefront and even playing Battlefield and seeing how fast aircrafts move in that, you have outer space to work with. Outer space is a hell of a lot of room. And I really think they need to really expand exactly where you can go. I know that always a problem with me in Battlefront 2. I would get into a dogfight or something, and I'd find myself, return to battle. And then you have that 10-second countdown, and then I get confused because it's space and I don't know what direction's which, and I wind up getting blown up by the timer. And something that actually happens to me in Battlefield a lot too, because the maps are huge, the maps are great, but the maps are not, fly a jet huge, and jets they go really fast, and I very easily find myself flying right out of bounds in them, and by the time I get myself turned around, I run out of time and blow up there. So knowing how Battlefront played with space battles, knowing how DICE plays with going out of bounds in jets, I really hope that they figure out how to balance that so that you're not, constantly going out of bounds. It's space, you got plenty of room to work with, so hopefully...
Yeah, and to be honest, when it comes to the hardware requirements of just having emptiness, I don't see how that really affects you. I don't want them to make a linear game. I want to be able to fly wherever I want, frankly, so it's all good. Something we can talk about now is new ships that we want to see added. Now, I'm going to let you go first, Ian, because I've got a little bit of a paragraph to say here, so what ship do you want to see added?
Right.
Any new ideas that you have?
So, I mean, to be honest, I'm more of I like the classics. I'm not into... I love Star Wars, don't get me wrong, but I'm not the kind of guy that really knows all the lore, and I can't say oh, I really love the VFX Cruiser 221 the Clone Wars or something. Like, I don't even know that's not even real. I like the stuff. I like to see the gunships are really one of my favorites. I like to see them more on ground battles though than in space. And of course I like the Jedi Starfighters are always fun to whip around in. Bombers are essential, and you can't have a Star Wars game without an X-Wing or a TIE Fighter. So call me boring, I really just like the classics. I did really like the one ship that came in Battlefront 2. I don't even know the name of it, but it was the it's not a tri-fighter. It had kind of like the dual wing things, and the clone troopers flew in, and it was kind of like an X-wing fighter, but it was not quite the same.
Oh, the Arc 170.
Yeah, that is it, and that was a ship that I really liked. Though I must say that was a ship that actually is capable of holding 3 pilots, but I did not like how in Battlefront you could only hold 1.
3 seats, a bomber, a bomber and a targeting guy, a pilot and a tail gunner. Even if it was just like a tail gunner or a guy who could fire like a player-controlled missile, that would have been an awesome feature, because on its own the Arc 170 isn't actually a very powerful fighter because it's really, really big and cumbersome. I mean, it's got good guns, but it's quite a big target, to be honest. So without a tail gunner or something, I don't really see how, from a practical sense, it's going to beat any sort of vulture droid or a tri-droid for that matter.
Exactly, and there we go with the vulture droids. That is the tri-fighter that shoots them out, right?
The tri-fighter. The tri-fighter is the smaller, lighter one.
Right. So which is the ship that shoots out the vulture droid? Not the vulture droid. The vulture droid is the ship itself. I'm talking about the buzzers. The buzzers.
Buzz droids.
Buzz droids.
Oh, I want to see them.
I definitely want to see them.
They would be awesome if you could just like spray them everywhere.
In episode 3, it was actually the tri-fighter which shot them out by the droids, and I always got in the tri-fighter in Battlefront 2, and I shot, and I'm like, hey, these aren't shooting buzz droids. So I really hope that actually happens, because those would be awesome.
Yeah, it adds like a whole new level of gameplay. Like, you could just be randomly flying, and then suddenly you've got all your systems are shutting down, and you realise there's this buzz droid sitting underneath your ship, ripping it to pieces. It adds a whole new level of things that you can do, and it's such a simple feature to implement. It's this tiny little thing just causing a few problems. It's so simple to put in, yet it adds this whole new level of awesomeness, to be honest.
Right, and I completely agree with that. That'd be such a cool thing. So I'd have to say those are probably what I want to see. Just more detail on the clone ships, guys, because, you know, like you said, there's 3 seats, 1 pilot. Doesn't really make sense, and the ship's not very great on its own. Yeah. But I think if we had 3 players in there, we could probably, you know, kick some butt. And as far as the droids go, I really want to see, you know, like I said, the buzz droids. And as far as all the classic stuff goes, I kind of like what they did with X-Wings and TIE Fighters. Those are working pretty good, so that's good for me. Let's hear what you got.
Alright, this is going to be a bit long, but I wanted different versions of the same class of ships. One of the new ships that I want is a Recussant class destroyer. It's seen in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. It was a bit of a derpy ship. It crashed into its own friend ship, and it's also seen firing a large laser at a Venator cruiser. And it was a really cool looking ship. It looks kind of skeletal, and I want to see different versions of the ships and the capital ships that are in the game. So like, some are fitted for capital engagement. They've got heavy shields. They've got heavy hitting weapons, but then perhaps they're flanked by frigates which actually aren't fitted for capital engagement at all. They're fitted for anti-aircraft fire. So you have this whole different array of like fleet tools available to you to take down the enemy exactly how you want to take them down. So I don't want to see linear ships, like boring generic ships that are just sent out. They have the same stuff each time. I want to see ships which are perhaps a little bit different. Ships that can fire different types of guns, that you, like, perhaps a bomber sees a frigate and he thinks, that's a nice target, I'm going to go take out its engines. He gets close to its engines and then he realises, oh crap, that's actually an AA frigate, and he has to actually turn around and run. And I want players to be able to create their own ships and bring them into the battle, so their ship can fight in orbit whilst they invade the surface of the command posts. Additional command posts secure supply lines so they can bring player-purchased equipment down to the battlefield. It's a bit complicated, and chances are DICE are never going to do it, but I think it'd be an awesome new addition to the Galactic Conquest game mode.
Yeah, I mean, I think DICE should probably just hire us.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea. I'd love to.
If you're watching Dice, we would love to be the new creative directors of the Battlefront series. Give us a call; you won't regret it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to question us whether we want to do the job. It's a yes.
Yeah, exactly, and we'll work for free as long as you pay for us to like live. You know.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd do this all day. I love this.
Me too.
It's fantastic.
It's great. And all right. So moving on now from what you just said as far as new ships and how ships should also be balanced. You also mentioned in our notes here, for people watching, we did take notes. We try. Starfighters should be able to fly in a squadron, as you said. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. I want starfighters to be able to perhaps have bot-controlled squadrons, and if you want to take it to a really bogged-down simple version, you take off and then you just like look at a couple of other taking off ships and you say, come on, follow me. But if you want to take it to a more advanced version, which seriously has a lot of repercussions in gameplay, you actually create your own bot squadron outside of game, and then they join you in the game. They meet up with you on the hangar deck. You can tell them to get into different ships, you can outkit their ships with special abilities, and overall it makes this whole new squadron, this like new feature which allows you to completely change how you fly. Because you could fly as a dogfighter, but you might be flying on your own and all of this battle's happening around you, and sometimes you could just really use a wingman, and players aren't that cool. Frankly, players, if they see you and they think you need a wingman, a lot of people think that people work in a team, and unless they're friends, like in real life or over Skype or something, they're not going to work in a team. That player is going to stand there and laugh. So I want to be able to have a bot that will be my wingman, right? Basically.
And something that I really hope to do, though, is when it comes to this new game, is get together a good team of people. I think that's something we really need to do. And I urge everybody here that's watching, that's part of the Battlefront community. I think when the new Battlefront comes out, as Elliot said, or not, why am I calling you Elliot? As Connor said, you know, people will just laugh at you if you want their help. So I urge all of you Battlefronters to have a sense of camaraderie when the new game comes out, and help your fellow brother out.
Yeah, when you see a guy getting absolutely bogged down by a ton of bots, throw a few grenades, or if you're in space, get in your starfighter and go help him out, because if you were in his position, you'd be as pissed off as he is that you're not helping. So you really have to band together with this. Okay, so we finished talking about flying in squadron. Now something I'd like to talk a little bit more about is being like a different role of pilot. I want there to be different roles. I don't want it just to be, you're a pilot, this is your task, do it how you will. I want there to be like specializations for what you do. Because I see a lot of people just getting bored at the generic task of a bomber, which is, so far has just been targeting subsystems and frigates and just going backwards and forwards, doing bombing runs over and over again, doing loops, dropping more bombs and waiting for them to reload, and it gets really boring. So I want them to add specialized targets, specialized bonuses, definitely some timed targets which move out of your range within a certain time, so you've got to break through with some fighters to get to them. I want them to add and give like more non-generic tasks to bombers, because when the game releases, if they do have space battles, I'd hope that they do, if the bomber doesn't have like this equally fun and rewarding task, I see a lot of empty bombers, because a lot of people are just going to jump for the fighters at the first chance they get. The X-Wing and the TIE Fighter, they'll be gone, but I just see the Y-Wing sort of sitting there for a while, and that's really what's going to win you the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think situations like this, I mean, I definitely agree with what you said about there being more like objective-based, depending on what kind of pilot you are, you know, and with how you kind of where you got to go and what you should destroy. But I also think this is a great place to, like I said, where kind of teamwork and strategy will come in. Maybe if you're noticing everybody's taking the fighter, you should be the guy that grabs the bomber and you know, does some damage with that. I think that's somewhere, like, if the game doesn't tell you to do that specifically, then I think people should really start taking it upon themselves to hop in that bomber and take out that transport, you know, themselves, and just kind of stuff like that. I think that's where kind of the people and their strategy really tie in. Some, you know, people should know, hey, you know, I see everybody grabbing this. There's dogfights obviously going on. Somebody's got to do damage to the other ship. Somebody's got to do damage to, you know, the critical systems. I'll grab the bomber.
Yeah, definitely. I want to see bomber squadrons as well. Or perhaps your squadron, you could be flying the bomber and maybe 2 of your bots are flying the bomber, and then the rest of the bots in your squadron will fly starfighters, because something that I see happening is one guy being really good on the other team in a starfighter and taking down all of the bombers in like a couple passes. And obviously, if your team doesn't have much cohesion, or there's like no bots covering your bombers, then like it's going to be child's play for anyone who's trying to take down a bomber. Because bombers, they're slow. Obviously they've got more armor, but they're still equally easy to take down when you start firing torpedoes and stuff at them. So I think we definitely do need squadrons for that level of play, because otherwise your teammate is just going to be flying and doing his own thing, taking out other things and shooting other things, and probably just going down to the surface to do little strafing runs on people that they don't like, rather than actually covering you, who the bomber, who is going to be the person that actually wins the game for them in space.
Yeah, I couldn't say that. I couldn't have said it better myself. You definitely need the squadrons, and you definitely need to have some diversity in the squadrons so that your bombers, which is, like you said, a very key part of winning the game, they need to have some protection. And you know, you can't always rely that your teammates are gonna take it upon themselves to back you up. So having some kind of system in place where you automatically have that backup will definitely be beneficial.
It definitely will. I mean, obviously the bot pilots can't be too good. I mean, they can't be ridiculously aimbot uber ridiculousness, that sort of level, but they definitely have to be able to sort of hold their own and buy you some time. I mean, I want to see dogfights which are actually more like dogfights rather than just people shooting at a moving target. I want to see them actually engaging in maneuvers with the enemy players. Now to finish it off, we're going to talk a bit about personalized fighters. Something I'd like to see is I don't want them to do, here, buy this for $5, you get the flaming camo for your fighter, or something just pathetically simple like that. I don't want it to be a premium thing or anything like that either. I mean, I think they should be unlocked via rank. You get it via rank, it's simple, done. Or if the game has a currency system, you buy it using in-game currency, done. I know you want to sell it as like a DLC aftermarket thing, but I don't want it to get like ridiculous to the point where there's all these like pink starfighters and stuff flying around with like shiny, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card, shiny card looking ships flying around, attacking each other, thinking to themselves, I'm the best player ever. I spent $10 for this skin. I don't want to see that. I want to see customization that doesn't just revolve on you changing the look of your fighter. I want to see customization like weapon customization. Do you have faster firing cannons? Do you have slower firing cannons? And obviously, whichever type of cannon you have, that uses up energy. You've got to worry about, can your ship handle the amount of output that you're trying to give? I want to see astromech droid variety. So say you could have a different series of astromech droid will actually give your ship bonuses. Perhaps if they're only 10%, that's still a bonus based on what you want to play. So if you want to play the dogfighter, perhaps you'll have a dogfighting astromech. He'll be really good at keeping your rear deflector up, and also really good at switching to the next target, but you've got to handle everything else. So perhaps if you're a bomber, it'll list all of the bombing targets in your area. So it's definitely something to look at. I want to see starfighter personalization on a much more detailed level. I don't want to see camos. Camos are something, they're a nice additional feature, but I think they kind of cheapen it as well. Colours, I'm fine with, so long as it's not like some ridiculous pink. I'd like to see some professionalism kept within the game. Something serious.
Right, and that's a great point as far as personalization goes, and I think that's something that I want to see throughout the whole game. Not just starfighters, but we really need to have a sense of uniformity. I don't want to see this be like Halo, where you can completely change around, what your person looks like and stuff like that. The Star Wars universe, I mean, with the exception of maybe the Rebels, all of their groups of soldiers are very uniform. Exactly.
They all conform to like a general look.
Exactly, and that's how it should be. You have the Empire; they're trying to keep order. They have their stormtroopers. The stormtroopers look the same, with the exception of high-ranking officials wearing different outfits. Rebels is very ragtag, so you would expect that they don't have a uniform. And clone troopers, of course, evolve into stormtroopers, so that's the same army military uniform. And droids are manufactured. They're not manufactured with cool designs. They're manufactured cheap and how they can look the same.
I'd like to see players be able to customize their player and their ship and stuff to a level of being able to change the color scheme, but I also want the color scheme to remain true to what faction they're playing as. I don't want to see...
Exactly.
I do not want to see like a pink droideka roll around the corner and this big purple rainbow shield goes up and starts shooting at you. Obviously that's an extreme, but if you give people an inch, they'll take a mile, so you got to be careful.
This is very true. So I think that's the pink Jordica with the purple shield. That's good.
Shooting rainbows of love.
Okay. What is this, Gary's mod now? All right, but yes, I think that's something we agree on. Then is kind of the uniformity, but I definitely agree. Personalization is something we definitely want to see, especially in fighters. We got to keep it realistic and not outlandish. And EA, keep the microtransactions in your pants.
Yeah, definitely. I don't mind if we see a few microtransactions, but anything that affects how much damage you can output, how quickly you can kill someone, anything that actually affects the game in itself. Like cosmetic stuff I'm fine with so long as it stays serious and it's like obtainable with in-game currency or in-game rank at some point. But
I'll tell you what, here's something that I'll tell EA. I will compromise on this microtransaction idea. You could have all the microtransactions you want, but you don't pay money. You actually have them subscribe to our YouTube channel, so then they can unlock the new things. That would be okay. Just keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your head, EA.
Yeah.
And just think about it. And I'll have my people call your people.
Your people. We've all got people like lawyers standing behind us. Agents.
Mom, did you email EA yet?
Yeah.
Mom. No, just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we could probably kind of wrap up.
Yeah. I mean, I want
take it away.
I want to say something here just to wrap up. Ultimately, space battles need to be amped up. There needs to be more features. There needs to be more to do. All of the things, or most of the things that we've talked about today, are possible. Obviously, if you have massive 1,000-player battles, that's kind of stretching it, obviously, but so long as EA are not aiming for stunning next-gen visuals with the Dr. Evil fingers, most Battlefronters, myself and Ian, agreed that Battlefront was a game that had fantastic gameplay. Hopefully EA noticed that this is what drew the fans in and add more features and gameplay elements before spending time adding lens flares and ridiculous visuals that are in no way a substitution for lack of rewarding and fun gameplay. I want to see a game that's fun to play, that keeps me coming back, that keeps me buying the DLC. I mean, if the DLC adds more features and more playability to the game, I'm going to buy it, but if it just adds a new map with some lens flare suns, I'm not really that interested. So I definitely want to see a focus on gameplay rather than visuals, because Battlefront was never about the visuals. That's not why we play it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself, buddy. That's right, guys. We just want to see it amped up. We want to see the gameplay. It doesn't have to look fantastic. It should look good. You know, that's a given. But all in all, it comes down to the mechanics of the game and what we can do as opposed to how we see what we're doing. So, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. It is really long, but you know what? I think some of you guys actually like listening to us talk about our ideas, and I really hope that you guys have... I hope so, and we would love to hear your ideas as well. So please leave comments down below and talk about what you personally want to see in the Battlefront game, and let us know what you think of our ideas. You know, these are just our own ideas, our own thoughts. This is mostly speculation, so don't hate on us if you don't agree with our opinions, because everybody has their own, and we want to hear yours as well. We're very open-minded about how the game could turn out.
What I want to see is if someone doesn't agree with our opinion, I want to see your opinion down below, so I can actually not try and correct you. I just want to know why you disagree with my opinion. Like what other ideas do you have? So definitely looking out for that.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of agree with that. Don't just hate on our opinions. Tell us yours, and maybe you'll change ours. I just want to thank Connor so much for doing a collaboration with me. And again, guys, please check out his channel. He makes some really awesome Battlefront videos over there, and you're probably going to be seeing a lot of him in the near future. So thanks so much, Connor. And same here, guys. If you have watched this all this way, then check out Ian's channel. It's a fantastic source for both Battlefront news and Battlefront content. You're probably going to be seeing a lot of Ian in the future, so definitely check out his channel, and if you enjoy the content, then subscribe. I mean, there's no reason not to. He does have good content, and this is just proving that two Battlefront YouTubers can just get along. It's a fantastic thing. I mean, we just talked for, must have been about 20 minutes now, about all of the different things that we want to see in Battlefront, and
it just proves that at heart we're all Battlefront gamers. So feel the love, guys. Share around.
We are the future.
Oh god. The next generation.
The next generation of commentators, guys.
Yeah.
It's Battlefront. Join the fray. See you on the Battlefront.
Yeah. Consoles have had their turn. It's YouTuber turn now. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Alright, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you actually watched this far, we appreciate it.
Yep, same here. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Done. Oh my god, do you realise how long this is?